In Japan, your blood type shows up on job applications. In South Korea, it shows up on dating profiles. Kindergarten teachers sort children into groups by it, not by age, not by ability, by blood type. Because the belief is that those four letters, A, B, O, A, B, reveal who you are at your core. Type A is the anxious perfectionist. Type O is the born leader. Type B is creative but selfish, and millions of people make real decisions about who to hire, who to date, and who to trust based on this. So here's the question. Is there anything to it? The largest studies ever conducted on blood type and personality, some analyzing over 10,000 people, found the same answer: 0. No statistically significant correlation between your blood type and any measurable personality trait. None. The gene that determines whether you are ABO or AB controls one thing: which sugar molecules sit on the surface of your red blood cells. It has no known connection to serotonin, no link to dopamine, no pathway to your brain at all. And yet, the belief doesn't just survive, it thrives. That is the part worth understanding. We are going to go type by type, ABO and AB, put each personality claim on the table, and test it against the actual science. Then we are going to flip the whole thing, because what your blood type does affect in your body turns out to be medically significant in ways almost nobody talks about. Heart disease risk, malaria resistance, blood clotting, even which bacteria colonize your gut. By the end, you will know exactly why the personality myth feels so convincing despite being wrong, and what your blood type actually does that is worth paying attention to. Let's put type A up first. The claim for type A goes like this: you are organized, careful, anxious, a perfectionist who can't let go of details. That description traces back to a single paper published in 1927 by a Japanese professor named Takeji Furukawa. No control group, no statistical rigor, and a motivation that makes the whole thing darker than most people realize. Furukawa wasn't trying to help people understand themselves. He was trying to explain why certain ethnic groups were, in his words, temperamentally suited to being governed. The theory has eugenic roots. The Japanese academic community rejected it within a decade. But the pop culture version survived, and nearly 100 years later, it still shows up in magazines, apps, and casual conversation as if it were settled science. So what does the actual data say? A 2015 study tested over 10,000 people, measuring anxiety, conscientiousness, and every other major personality dimension against blood type. The result for type A and anxiety was no significant link, not a weak link, not a trend that almost reached significance, nothing. And the biology explains why nothing is exactly what you should expect. The ABO gene sits on chromosome 9. It codes for an enzyme that sticks sugar molecules onto the surface of your red blood cells. That is its job. Meanwhile, the gene that actually influences anxiety, the serotonin transporter gene called SLC6A4, sits on chromosome 17. Different chromosome, different function, no interaction. Saying your blood type controls your anxiety is like saying the color of your car determines how fast the engine runs. They are not connected by any mechanism. Now take type B. The stereotype is creative but selfish, unpredictable, hard to trust. In South Korea, this goes beyond casual belief. Type B men are considered undesirable partners. There is a specific term for it, bihayeol hyomo, which roughly translates to type B discrimination. Real people get rejected on real dates because of a sugar molecule on their red blood cells that has no pathway to their behavior. And type O, the supposed natural leader, confident, dominant, born to take charge. Here is the problem with that one. Type O is the most common blood type on the planet. About 45% of the global population carries it. So when someone points out that a famous CEO or military leader is type O, the math alone explains it. Nearly half of all humans are type O. Of course, many leaders are. That is not a pattern. That is probability. A 2014 analysis pooled over 7,000 people across multiple countries and measured every ABO group against the Big Five personality traits, the gold standard in psychology for measuring who you actually are. Openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, neuroticism. The effect sizes for every blood type on every trait were near zero. Not small, near zero. The chemicals that actually drive dominance and risk-taking, dopamine and testosterone, are regulated by genes that have nothing to do with ABO. Your blood type is not whispering instructions to your brain. It is decorating your red blood cells with sugars. That is it. So what about AB? This is the rarest type. Only about 4% of the population. The personality label is predictably vague, mysterious, unpredictable, a mix of A and B traits. Read that description again. Mysterious and unpredictable. That could describe anyone on any given Tuesday. And that vagueness is not a coincidence. It is the entire engine behind why blood type personality feels true. In 1948, a psychologist named Bertram Forer gave every student in his class the exact same personality description. Word for word, identical. But he told each student the description had been written specifically for them based on a personality test. The average accuracy rating, 4.26 out of 5. Students were nearly certain the description captured who they really were. Forer had pulled the text from a newsstand astrology book. This is called the Barnum effect, and it is the reason blood type personality survives despite zero evidence. The descriptions are written to be broad enough to fit anyone, but specific enough to feel personal. Layer confirmation bias on top, the tendency to notice and remember evidence that supports what you already believe, and the illusion becomes airtight. You believe type A people are anxious, so every time you meet a nervous person and learn they are type A, it feels like proof. Every time you meet a calm type A, you forget about it. The rarity of AB makes this even stickier. When only 4% of people share your type, the label feels exclusive, special. Like insider knowledge about yourself, that feeling of recognition is real. The science behind it is not. So blood type tells you nothing about your personality. But here is where this gets genuinely interesting, because blood type does affect your body in ways that actually matter, and almost nobody talks about them. The ABO gene does not talk to your brain, but it talks to your blood vessels, your immune system, and your gut. Those sugar antigens, the ones that determine whether you are ABO or AB, are not just sitting on red blood cells. They are expressed on the surface of endothelial cells, the cells that line every blood vessel in your body. And they influence something called von Willebrand factor, a protein that helps your blood clot. Type A and AB individuals carry higher levels of von Willebrand factor. More clotting protein means blood that clots more easily. And that has a real consequence. A meta-analysis pooling over 62,000 people found that type A carries roughly a 20% higher risk of coronary heart disease compared to type O. Not because of personality, because of clotting chemistry. Type O has its own trade-offs. Without A or B antigens on red blood cells, the malaria parasite Plasmodium falciparum has a harder time doing what it needs to do. The parasite normally uses those antigens to form clumps of infected cells, rosettes that clog tiny capillaries and cause severe disease. Type O blood disrupts that process. The result is a 30 to 50% reduction in risk of severe malaria. That is not a personality trait. That is an evolutionary advantage that shaped human migration patterns. But type O is not all upside. The bacterium H. pylori, the one that causes stomach ulcers, binds more effectively to O antigen on the stomach lining. Type O individuals have a measurably higher risk of peptic ulcers. Your blood type is not telling your brain to be a leader or a perfectionist. It is shaping which infections hit you harder, how quickly your blood forms clots, and even which bacteria thrive in your gut. Those ABO antigens are secreted into your intestinal lining, where they serve as fuel for specific microbial populations. Your blood type is literally feeding certain species of gut bacteria and starving others. That is real biology. That is measurable. And that is something worth knowing about. Think about what just happened. You came in with a question about personality, and the answer turned out to be about clotting proteins, malaria resistance, and gut bacteria. The thing your blood type actually influences has nothing to do with whether you are anxious or confident or creative. It has to do with how easily your blood clots, which infections hit you harder, and which microbes are thriving in your intestines right now. That is not a personality quiz. That is medical information. And it is worth knowing for completely different reasons than most people think. If you are type A or AB, the higher von Willebrand factor in your blood means paying closer attention to cardiovascular health is not paranoia. It is informed. If you're type O, understanding your ulcer risk and your malaria resistance gives you a clear picture of the body you are actually living in. That is what your blood type is for. Not dating profiles, not job applications, not sorting kindergartners into personality buckets. Think back to that box on the Japanese job application, the one that asks for your blood type as if it reveals your character. The box is asking the wrong question. The sugar molecules on your red blood cells have a story to tell about your immune system, your arteries, and your disease risk. They have nothing to say about who you are as a person. The human urge to sort people into neat categories is powerful enough to keep a debunked theory alive for nearly 100 years. But your body is always more interesting than the myth. Follow what the science actually shows, and the answers are stranger, more useful, and more fascinating than any personality label could ever be.